Welcome to my train room. I'm Don Surratt, a lifelong model railroader, and I'd like to take this opportunity to give you an overview of the layout and maybe answer some of the questions and comments that we've gotten from viewers of our YouTube videos and from other social media platforms. Before we start our tour, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that alarm bell so you won't miss any of our future videos. I spend a good part of my time right here. This is the main control panel for pretty much everything you see on this lower deck. I generate train orders using a computer program by Albion Software called ShipIt. It's set up in such a way that I can run the railroad by myself, or it will support up to about 6 operators, although I don't think we've ever done 6. There are very few times when multiple trains need to do anything simultaneously that is critical that one operator can't do it. I've enjoyed it very much from that standpoint. Also, you never do the same thing twice. ShipIt creates an endless variety of traffic, and it's a lot of fun. This cabinet houses power supplies, Tam Valley Octopus servo controllers for the switches, signals for the lower deck, relays for live frogs, and more signal boxes on the lower deck. And I might add at this point that I learned from experience on previous layouts not to hide any electronics under the table. And the older you get, the more you appreciate it not being under the table. Access is important, and having it out front makes life a lot easier. There's one other small panel that controls a couple of signals. We'll start here in Portland, Maine, which is the area you see in front of you, and this represents Portland as I remember a lot of the details from my younger years, about 1960. This is the main yard in both senses of the word. It represents Rigby Yard in Portland. Track layout isn't anything like the prototype, but it's what you do on a model railroad. Trains leave westbound, which is this direction. They go to Boston. Trains moving in the other direction go to Bangor, or to St. Johnsbury, or to South Portland, or Commercial Street, which is on the other side of the layout, and we will get there shortly. Trains to St. Johnsbury that leave to our left will eventually reappear coming up through Crawford Notch past Willybrook Bridge and the Mount Willard dwelling, and they enter my helix over here to the right. They make 4 turns in the helix before emerging on the upper deck through the gateway of Crawford Notch and into the Crawford Notch station. This little control panel right here controls the switches at Crawford's. There's a passing siding and 1 spur siding. The switch to the right is automated with optical sensors because the whole upper deck is on a reverse loop, and this prevents a lot of bad words if you forget to throw the switch. Trains coming out of Crawford's. Go through a cut. Past the diamond at Whitefield with the ball signal. No switching happens here. And then continues across the upper deck on the aisle side over my main control panel. We then pass through another cut, which is almost impossible to see for the visitor, but our GoPros find it just fine. So you'll notice that that turn was made with sectional track, and I apologize for that, but it's so easy to get a nice flowing curve in a sharp radius that way. Okay, we then arrive in St. Johnsbury, and this is a great little railroad town. There's a lot going on in St. Johnsbury. It's served by 4 railroads. As far as I know, it still is to this day, at least 3, and provides a lot of switching for the operator in this location. He's got 2 control panels here. This is St. Johnsbury's primary control panel, and then there's a secondary panel off to the side that's used just for the engine service tracks and one industry. The other panels with the plastic fronts include this one, which controls all the signals on the upper deck. A spur branches off from St. Johnsbury and comes around on the upper deck to the town of North Walpole. Now, North Walpole was selected because in my time period, which is roughly 1960-61, this was the first home for Steamtown. So it gives me a logical place to keep my steam locomotives and an excuse to run them once in a while. But it also required some kind of excursion car, so we decorated some commercially available models for Monadnock, Steamtown, and Northern, which was the railroad as Steamtown called it in the day, and they had cars that were painted yellow with black trim. And my favorite locomotive to pull them is this parts-built locomotive, which I constructed in 1975 using such varied things as Mantua Mikado chassis, Bowser drivers, a Tyco Chattanooga choo-choo boiler wrapped in brass with separate details applied, and a cab from Harold Millor, which was a photo-etched brass cab, long gone from the market, but quite a nice looking kit and fun to build. And of course, we've got a local panel here. And there's a fair amount to do here. There's, besides the excursion train, there's a through freight that runs in here twice a day, and a local freight that runs in once a day. The panels with the black plastic fronts are homes for various electronics. Not a whole lot in the North Walpole panel, but there's a diode logic panel for the switches. There's a frog juicer from Tam Valley that provides power for the frogs of the switches. Trains that leave the south end of St. Johnsbury complete the reverse loop section, go behind a backdrop, pass behind Crawford's, and back down through the helix. After our trip over the Mountain Division, trains return back downhill to Portland, past Willie Brook, back behind the backdrop, still continuing downhill out of sight, and appearing again on the lower deck on the opposite side from where we're standing. Now, earlier I said we'd cover action on the other side of the layout at a later time. Well, as the Mountain Division train returns past the roundhouse and back to Rigby Yard, we'll now go over to the other side of the layout and look at what happens over there. The traffic that you'll see on this side on the lower deck, besides the mainline trains going to Bangor, St. Johnsbury, North Walpole, the two tracks in the foreground go to the Grand Trunk Interchange, which consists of two hidden tracks that pass behind the backdrop and into the staging area. The other traffic on the lower deck, again using these two foreground tracks, will be trains to South Portland, which is the industrial area and contains 7 industries for switching by a local switcher. There is a full-time switcher stationed here. Part of what makes this area fun, it's easy for a newcomer to switch this because all of the sidings are trailing point. There's 7 industries here on 7 separate tracks, so there's a fair amount to do, and trains can range up to 14 cars. Thank you for watching, and if you haven't had a chance to see some of our other videos, this would be a good opportunity to do so. I think you would enjoy. Please like and subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss any future videos.